Morning YouTube, welcome back to the channel. This is IMAX Sports with another football video, and today I am talking about the divisional round of the playoffs. The wildcard round of the playoffs is pretty underwhelming. There was one, or maybe you could consider the Bengals Raiders game close, but there's really only one close game last week, and that was the 49ers Cowboys game, and that was only close for one quarter. And so last week was a pretty uneventful week of football. There was four blowouts, two games that were blowouts until they became close, and not a lot of great expectations were set for how the playoffs are going to go this season. This week, though, starting off with a bang. Um, we had two games yesterday, and both of them were incredible games. We had Bengals Titans, and we have 49ers Packers. And both situations, the underdog team got the victory. I believe Tennessee was going to be the best team in the AFC this year. I actually made a video about it last week. I really thought that they're going to go far, and they just didn't work yesterday. Derrick Henry was back. He had an okay game. Donta Foreman had a really good game, but their passing game just couldn't get it going outside of A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown had some good plays, but Ryan Tannehill threw three interceptions, and that was really two of them being in the red zone, and that's really what turned the tide of the game. If you have three interceptions, two of them being in the red zone, you're not going to score a whole lot of points. Even if they're able to get field goals on those drives instead of turnovers, the Bengals would have had worse field position. The Titans would have had six more points on the board. So I really thought the Titans were going to do well. I was kind of rooting for them because I'm a Derrick Henry fan, but you know, it is what it is. It was a really good game. Like, if you told me that the Bengals Titans game was going to be 19-16, not only would it be 19-16, but actually like an interesting, good, exciting game, I would not have believed you because I expected that game to be like 40-40, or like 30 something to 30. I thought all the games this weekend, except for Packers Niners, would be well into the 30s. I expected Packers Niners to be lower scoring. I was not expecting 13-10 though. The MVPs for this weekend, by far, are Jamar Chase and Deebo Samuel. Not even close. Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon had a very strong game. I'll give him that. But Jamar Chase was there every single time Joe Burrow needed him to be there, and Joe Burrow did have a lot of help from all of his receivers. Uzama, he was there whenever he needed him to be. T. Higgins had a couple of key catches, but Jamar Chase has been fantastic in the playoffs so far. Joe Burrow had 0 touchdowns and 1 interception, but he had 348 yards, continuing his streak of 300-yard games, which he's been phenomenally good over the last 5 weeks. The last few weeks of the playoffs and the last 2 weeks of the regular season, the first 2 weeks of the playoffs, Joe Burrow has been lighting up the football field. And Ryan Tannehill he got it going in the second half, but really was not on target. He had some good throws, but just wasn't there. Overall, very, very solid football game. In the Packers game, though, that was the second game this weekend. Oh, and both one seeds lost. This was the first time that both one seeds lost in the divisional round since 2010-2011 season, when the Patriots and Falcons both lost in the divisional round. Even more surprising, though, was the Niners-Packers game. And I've always thought the Niners were a good football team. I've tried to give them credit this season for how well they've done with their injuries. They've had so many injuries over the last 3 seasons. It's insane. But I think that one thing that needs to be talked about a little bit more is whether or not Aaron Rodgers still deserves the NFL MVP. I know that the NFL MVP is mostly a regular season award, but I think it's tough to call someone the most valuable player in the league when they get to a playoff game as the quarterback, the team leader, and they score 10 points. I don't care what defense you're up against. I think that it's hard to say that someone is the most valuable player on a team if they score 10 points and lose the game. especially when they got the ball to start. Like the Packers got the ball with 4.5 minutes on the clock. They could have just gone down the field and scored, and it would have been over. But they weren't able to do it. They just couldn't do it. And I think that Deebo Samuel has a very strong case for the NFL MVP award for this season. Uh, he's been he hasn't been out, I don't believe, in any games this year. Um, he had 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns in the regular season. So far in the playoffs, he has 200 yards and a touchdown. I believe Jimmy Garoppolo only had 300 yards so far. Debo has more touchdowns than Jimmy Garoppolo does in the playoffs. And he has that dual threat that he can run or catch, and you don't know what you're going to get from him. And he's so hard to cover. Um, Also, like this, the 49ers, like the Packers would not be where they are as a team without Aaron Rodgers. But the 49ers would not have won. Not only made the playoffs, they barely made the playoffs by the skin of their teeth in the NFC. But they would not have made the playoffs, never mind won 2 playoff games if Deebo Samuel wasn't part of that team. So I think that Deebo Samuel is starting to gander a very strong argument for the league MVP this season. Um, I also want to mention that Jimmy Garoppolo is now 4-1 in the playoffs in his career. And I know that the chances of him losing in the next 2 weeks, especially if he plays Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes in those 2 weeks, is very high that he does accumulate another loss. But being 4-1 in the first 5 starts of your playoff career is very impressive. He doesn't have the best playoff stats in the world, but if you win games, that doesn't matter in the playoffs. Nobody cares about playoff stats. They care about winning games. And I know that if you put a lot of quarterbacks on the 49ers, they'd be a very strong team. They've had some injuries, but generally speaking, if you put a quarterback on the 49ers, they would have a pretty strong chance to do well. But Jimmy Garoppolo has now won 4 playoff games in 5 playoff games. He's won 4 out of 5, which I know is not a large sample size, but it's a very strong start to your career. Not a lot of quarterbacks can do that, even if they are on a good team. And this 49ers team is very strong. They have a good running game, they have a good defense, but it's not like it's one of the great all-time teams. They've also had a lot of injuries to deal with. Deebo Samuel was injured in that game. Trey Hendrickson had some injuries in that game. Not Trey Hendrickson, sorry. Trent Williams. Sorry. Trent Williams was injured for the entirety of the game. Nick Bosa had some issues. But the 49ers have never been healthy. Like, over the last 3 years, they have not once, not even close to been fully healthy in the last 3 seasons. And he's still been able to have the success that he's had. He's 33-14 on the 49ers. The Niners, if you include playoffs, he's 37-15. The 49ers as a team outside of Jimmy Garoppolo are 6-28. He's 36-15, and they're 6-28 without him. I know that his injuries have caused them to have all those games without him, so it kind of hurts him a little bit. Like, oh, you get injured a lot, you can't be there for your team. But he's still given them 2 very strong playoff runs. And I got to give Jimmy a lot of credit for that. There's something to being a good game manager, and there's something to being a good clutch performer. And Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have a lot of bad throws last night, if I'm going to be completely honest. He did have that interception, but he didn't have a lot of bad throws. He started 0 for 5, and of those 5 throws, only one of them was really a bad throw. And then when the second half, by the end of the first half, he started clicking. And then the second half, the offense was off to the races. They had almost 200 yards. The Packers had barely over 50. They came back from that 10-point deficit they had at the half, and they were able to win the game. The defense had played phenomenally well as well. They wouldn't have won it without the defense. Nick Bosa had 2 sacks, bringing his career total up to 6.5 in the playoffs. So he could potentially be, in a few years from now, he could potentially be fighting Willie McGinnis for that sack record in the playoffs. Willie has 16. Nick Bosa has 6.5 in just 5 games. So he definitely is looking dangerous in the playoffs. Next week, their matchup is either going to be against the Rams or it's going to be against the Buccaneers. And if it's against the Buccaneers, then we'll see the first time that Jimmy Garoppolo and Tom Brady have ever played each other. And that'll be really interesting because Jimmy Garoppolo, as a lot of you know, used to be on the Patriots with Tom. Now, both of them are in the championship, potentially the championship game. The Patriots are in the playoffs, so look who's laughing now. But but it'll be interesting to see if those two play. If Brady can win today, it'll be interesting to see those two play against each other because they've never done it before. And it's always interesting to see someone play against their former backup. I think that Jimmy would have a lot to prove in that game, and if he were to win that game, then I think that that would also add a lot to his credibility, not only as a starting quarterback, but also as the 49ers' future. He's kind of fighting for his job this year because they did draft a quarterback very high in the draft last year. They drafted Trey Lance at, I want to say, the 4th pick. They had a very high draft pick last year. They might have even traded up a little bit, and they got Trey Lance very high. And so whenever your team picks a quarterback high, your job is in jeopardy. And I think that it would be insane for them to give up on Jimmy, especially with the success that he's had with the team when he's healthy. But it doesn't look like they're too confident in him, especially after drafting Trey Lance. So we'll see how all that goes. I think that Jimmy will solidify his job if he wins another game, though. But I think that this game definitely added to his resume and his ability to win games, for sure. Looking forward to today. I think that it's going to be I think that it's going to be 2 more good games of football. I love playoff football because all of the games are usually fairly close. We have Bills Chiefs at the later game, and we have Tampa versus the Rams at the 3:30 game, 3 o'clock. I think it's 3 o'clock. So we have Tampa against the Rams at 3 o'clock. I have Tampa and the Bills winning. So I think that both of them are going to be very strong games. Both of them are probably going to be high scoring games, but you really never know. I think that with Tom Brady against Matthew Stafford, those are 2 of the best offenses in the league with 2 somewhat inconsistent defenses. So that'll definitely be a high scoring game. And the other one, 2 very strong defenses that came on late in the season, but the last time they played each other was 38-20. So very excited for this round of playoff football. Patrick Mahomes is 7-2 in the playoffs, looking to improve to 8-2. Josh Allen, pretty decent record in the playoffs to start. I think he's 2-2, 3-2, looking to improve that here. And Matthew Stafford is making his first ever appearance in the divisional round of the playoffs. He's never played on a team that isn't the Detroit Lions before, so he's had a very uphill battle to getting to the playoffs. But now that he has an actual team, he did well last week, well enough to make the divisional round, and I'm excited to see what he does against Brady this weekend. So those are my thoughts so far in the divisional round of the playoffs. I have a couple video ideas lined up about the playoffs, about different things for this week, some exciting new videos, so I'm curious to see what you guys think of this week's playoffs so far. Anything you want to say, post in the comments below, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.